of you. It's always fun to see all the familiar faces. Our speaker tonight is an incredible naturopathic doctor. Definitely one of my favorites. I highly recommend her. She's an amazing educator who's always extremely current with all the up-to-date information, which is sometimes rare to find, so we always enjoy that about her. She practices on the mainland, and she specializes in digestion, children's health, as well as women's health and mind-body awareness. So if you can all help me welcome Dr. Miranda Wiley.
Thank you all for coming out. I know I'm competing with patio season right now. It's just launching. I really appreciate you choosing to come here instead. I'm Miranda Wiley. I'm a naturopathic doctor in Vancouver, and I love coming over here. I didn't travel last year because I was home with a baby, and it's nice to be back at Health Essentials and giving a talk in this beautiful upstairs space with technology all around, which is really fun. Tonight we're going to be going over digestion. It's such a sort of a well-known subject, and yet one that we keep learning more and more about each year as we dig deeper into the research. I do tend to stay current. I don't read a lot of fiction anymore. I used to, and now it's just the latest articles and podcasts and what's coming up. So we're going to look at digestion and how it relates to various chronic diseases in the system, as well as supporting our immune balance. I do a lot of work with allergies, a lot of work with autoimmune conditions, and I really can't start touching the immune health until we've really got a good established basis in the gut. So we're talking about digestion. It's pretty simple. We're doing it every day. Food goes in, waste comes out, so it's just digestion. But if we want to consider Shakespeare's quote, and it's his birthday on Saturday, that the eyes are the windows to the soul and give us a huge insight to that person, the gut is really the window to the entire body health. We cannot chase skin diseases or immune dysfunction or mental health unless we're really addressing the gut first. I like this because it makes us kind of think out of the box as to how we look at the human body. Essentially, we have this outer layer of thicker, multi-layered skin that protects us from the outside elements. And then we have this immune system that lines us where we're at our most vulnerable. So it's all at the periphery, because that's where we're subject to violation. If we scratch ourselves, that's where diseases can penetrate. But it also lines our urogenital systems, it's over in the respiratory tree, and then lining the digestive tract as well. And where I would change this would be to put like a lot more purple dots along the line. Because it's estimated we have between 70 and 80% of our immune system is in our digestive tract. So out here, as I say, we've got 15, 20 layers of epithelial skin tissue. In the digestive tract, we've got just one cell between the bloodstream and everything that is inner and us, and the external environment. So we're kind of like this big donut. So the body really concentrates its immune fortress along the digestive tract. So we'll start by looking at the ideal, what we're all going to be heading towards. So if we're looking at digestion perfection, really the first place where digestion starts is in the brain. We want to be smelling the food, we're cutting it up, we're hearing it sizzle, our senses are becoming engaged and preparing our entire digestive tract for that process. Then obviously it comes into the mouth, we'll make sure we're digesting or masticating well, breaking it up into tiny pieces, beginning that introduction with the salivary enzymes, down into the stomach, into the small intestine. The pancreas and the liver release their juices to help things along, then through the large intestine, and then out of the body. So we have this whole little pathway going through our system. When we're looking at the gut, really it's been called the second brain. We have more nerve endings in our digestive tract than we have in our brain itself. So it really is a powerhouse of neurochemicals, neurotransmitters. Most of our serotonin is made in the gut, our dopamine is made in the gut, and then that's what's going to travel up and affect our mental function. And the two are connected by a nerve called the vagus nerve. It's a cranial nerve, it starts in the brain. About 80% of it is sensory, so it's taking in information about the sense of smells coming in, about what juices are being excreted, where our pH is at. It's a sensory nerve predominantly. But then it also feeds back from the gut to the brain, and so we have this two-way communication. So if people get bad news, they'll often, I feel it in my gut first, or they might get nauseous at the sensation, they might lose their appetite, get loose stools, get constipated. Likewise, if our digestion is compromised, we'll start seeing a bit more anxiety, insomnia, depression, foggy thinking. So we see this back and forth connection. Yeah, and that's through predominantly the nerves, and then the microbiome, which we'll talk about a lot more when we get to the large intestine. That's about 4 pounds. They're roughly equivalent in weight. each 3 to 4 pounds depending on our size. There's a lot of communication there. When we're talking about the mouth, to optimize it there's an Ayurvedic saying that we want to drink our food and chew our drink. So when we're taking in a meal, it's not enough just to break it down into small enough that I won't choke pieces. We actually want to blend it with our saliva, turn it into a puree as much as possible. So really taking that time, my grandmother's thing of, I think it was like my great-grandmother, of 100 bites per mouthful, which can be tedious. I'm done now. But we want to take it from that original form. We make it smaller by grinding it up with our teeth. We want to actually get it into that liquid. And then chewing our drink refers to not just having that glass of water and guzzling it down, but having little sips, mixing it with our salivary juices, and swallowing that down. Especially if we're looking at juicing, where you're getting a lot of nutrients coming in. If you're just dub, we're bypassing the first stage of digestion. So little sips, mix it up well, and chew your drink. So we're slowing down that digestive process. Stomach equivalent for me is the fire. In Chinese medicine, we have the Ming Men fire. So we've got this highly acidic, caustic environment, which we want to have. We want to burn up that food. So again, if we have a log and it's going to sit on a fire, it should break down completely into ash. We don't want things to be, staying in kind of, partially burned, a little bit charred edges. We want it to fully break down. Small intestine I'll come back to. It's just next logically on the journey from the stomach, goes right into that small intestine. The pancreas is our only gland that has both internal and external functions. So internally, it's releasing hormones that help to balance out our blood sugar. So we've got the insulin that rises when our blood sugar levels go up, and the glucagon that rises as our blood sugar levels start to drop. So after a meal, insulin predominates. It tells the body we've got lots of energy. We've got all the sugar floating around. Let's start getting it into the cells and taking it out of the bloodstream. As the blood sugar levels in the bloodstream drop, we now want to start liberating energy from our muscle stores, from our liver, ultimately from our fat stores, and that's glucagon's job. So they're never up at the same time. They're on either ends of a teeter-totter. Externally, the pancreas is releasing digestive enzymes into that small intestine. So it's releasing the enzymes that help us to break down our fats, to break down our proteins, to break down our starches and long carbohydrates. It also releases bicarbonate. So we have that really acidic stomach, which we want to have to burn up any pathogens that might be coming in to start really breaking down the food. But then if we kept that high acidity, low pH moving, we're going to start damaging some very thin and vulnerable tissue. So the pancreas releases a lot of essentially baking soda out into the small intestine, and it neutralizes that pH. So the pH starts to come up a little bit as we move through the small intestinal tract. The liver takes care of first pass. This means that everything and anything that we take by mouth goes to the liver first. So we take it in, it's going to get absorbed through the small intestine. All of the blood vessels that drain the small intestine lead directly to the liver. So nothing enters into our body without passing through the gates of the liver. The liver will see if it's toxic. We're going to start to neutralize that right away and not allow it into the bloodstream. If this is good, we're going to let it through. Does it need to be methylated? Does it need to be metabolized in some way? So liver gets first dibs on any medication, food, water, drink, whatever we are taking in by mouth. Goes straight there. It is the key detoxifier of our system. So we have 2 phases of liver detox. It takes that toxic element, goes through phase 1, that actually makes an intermediate that is more dangerous, more reactive, and damaging to the system. And then we have our phase 2 liver detox, which breaks that down, makes it water soluble, or something that can be excreted in bile and gets it out of the body. So we want to have a balance between our phase 1 and phase 2. If phase 1 is underactive, we've got these toxins swimming around that aren't being addressed. If our phase 2 is underactive, we're in a place where we've got more damaging toxins floating around. So we want to make sure we're starting that breakdown process and eliminating them before they can do damage. And it is the producer of bile. So the liver is constantly producing little drips of bile. That's getting collected into the gallbladder. We have the sensation of fat in our mouth. You put the butter on your bread, you get that oily film. That's going to send a signal through the vagus nerve again and tells the gallbladder to squeeze out all of its bile contents. And now we can start to digest and metabolize the fats and the fat-soluble vitamins. Bile is also our own best laxative. So it's something, if we're looking at constipation issues, we want to maybe look at the liver first. And for all of the work that it does, detoxifying everything that first comes into the body, everything that's circulating through the bloodstream, it doesn't have an exit. So the liver and the intestines are really, really closely linked. They need each other to do their jobs properly and effectively. Small intestine, this is sort of my favorite area of interest right now. It has a number of roles. It is releasing its own enzymes, secreting it right out. So we're getting some enzymes from the pancreas. There are some enzymes that came out from the stomach, some that started in the salivary glands. But the small intestine is releasing enzymes and starting to digest the food here. Its main job is nutrient absorption and to support our immune function. So I brought a very high-tech demo. I'm going to recruit Hank again to be in hand. Very high-tech. Travels well on airplanes.
Yes, I do.
Yes, as does my piece of string. So this is 20 feet long. This is how long our small intestines are. So this is all bundled up and coiled up right within our abdomen. You want to think of the intestines being about an inch, inch and a half in diameter. So you have this very, very long tube. And then there's muscles lining it. And think of it also as being made of something like pantyhose type substance. So as we're, thank you. I'll that back. Hey there. As we're taking in that food, the stomach is first, we've released lots of enzymes, we've started breaking it down in our mouth, we've exposed it to acids and enzymes in our stomach, we've started churning it and breaking it down further there. It's going into the small intestine, the pancreas has released enzymes and bicarb that's changing that pH, the liver's released the bile. We now have this incredibly long tube that's 1 cell thick, and the muscles are, munching on it and moving it around. And because it's only 1 cell thick, it's quite porous. So think of it as pantyhose, and you're like pushing your oatmeal down there, and as you're munching it, it's going to start oozing through that pantyhose, and we can start absorbing it into the bloodstream. That's all then going to get shipped up off to the liver for processing. It moves incredibly quickly. So that 20 feet, food stays in our small intestine for only about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. So it's moving along quite quickly. We want to be absorbing nutrients along the way. If we see the small intestine compromised in any way, then we start running into issues, and this is the perfection digestion stage. We'll be talking about where the problems can happen now. So we have this very, very long tube where we really want to be absorbing all of our nutrients. And it's where the bulk of the immune cells are lying, because it's where we're the most vulnerable. 1 cell thick, something that's a little bit too sharp or a little bit too acidic can cause damage and create a leaky gut situation. And then the large intestine is where all the microbiome lives. So these 4 to 5 maybe pounds of bacteria. And it's estimated, I just did an intensive last Saturday, that we have 2,000 different species of bacteria in our gut, and of those there are 7,000 different strains. And yet the body is recognizing them as self. We're not mounting an immune response against our probiotic-friendly flora. They're a part of us, even though they have different DNA and they are external and they are other. We have accepted them and acknowledged them as our own because they are so beneficial to our health. We give them a steady temperature, a regular supply of moisture, and a regular supply of nutrition. We're a good host. They in turn protect us from pathogenic microbes, help us to break down some of our more difficult to digest food substances. And in the 1990s, when they did the Human Genome Project, they thought it was going to take forever. They were going to take DNA, start breaking down, saying, okay, this gene is related to breast cancer, this gene is related to being blonde, all of how do we take nearly 7 billion people on the planet and look at their genetic code. And they actually learned it pretty quickly. And they're sitting around on some very expensive machinery, and what do we do now? And someone said, well, let's start looking at the bacteria that we have in our mouth, and we have in our digestive tract, and we have under our fingernails. Let's start learning about that. And that's a huge project. Because of those 2,000 different species and 7,000 different strains, we are all unique in them. So we all have our own DNA that shows that I am me and you are you. We all have our own fingerprints, our own blood vessels in our eyes that we can look at if you want to do a retinal scan, like in the James Bond movies. We also have our own DNA signature, or microbiome signature, our own bacterial imprints. So if we do swabs of mouths, we can see that we are, again, all unique. That my bacteria like me and my DNA, your bacteria like you and your DNA. So much information, and this is where it's really exciting, because every year, every decade, we're gaining so much more information about the microbiome and its role in our health. It's where fermentation happens. So we're taking in your broccoli or your oat bran, we can't digest that. Nowhere along the way do we provide the enzymes that start to break down that kind of fiber. So it goes into the gut and we release, and the bacteria start to break it down through fermentation. They release fuel from that byproduct that becomes nutrients for the small intestine, large intestine. And it helps us to resorb fluids. So between the saliva, the stomach, the small intestine, the pancreas, the liver, we're releasing about 8 liters of digestive fluid every day and just constantly washing it out. When we get to the large intestine, that's when we reabsorb that liquid, concentrate the stool, and we pass out our solid waste. So we're absorbing an awful lot of fluid there. So we want to make sure we have enough water to keep that flushing nicely, keep it rinsing out well. So what could go wrong? It's a pretty simple system. Food comes in, we break it down, and away it goes. But as you might guess, digestion's the center part of every naturopath's practice. It's filled a room tonight. Digestion is a pretty big subject. So if we're looking at the brain, what are some issues that might come up with that affect digestion? Stress is the big one. It's huge. When we're telling our vagus nerve that there's stress outside there, we go into there's the 2 arms of the nervous system. So we've got the gas pedal, which is our fight or flight response. It's our sympathetic dominance. That means we're in danger, that someone's cutting us off in traffic, or there's an avalanche coming our way. And so we move blood away from the digestive tract, away from the reproductive organs. Because if you're about to get eaten by a bear, it doesn't matter if you digest your last meal, it doesn't matter if you want to carry a child. We want to spend 10-20% of our time, we're designed to spend 10-20% of our time in that stress, and then we want to go back into the parasympathetic dominance, which is the rest and digest, or the breathe and feed. So we got back to that place where it's now about survival of the tribe rather than the individual. And blood is returning to the digestive tract, returning to the reproductive organs, and we're now about nourishing ourselves and propagating the species. Other issues that can come up are concussions, that it can affect motility along the small intestine. Tumors obviously can affect digestion, strokes, so anything in the brain. But stress is the big one. So what do we do to treat stress? Stress management. Brain training. So there's some really simple tools. It doesn't have to be things that come in a bottle. Meditation, just taking some time to slow down and look after yourself and tune in. There are some food-based meditations where you take a raisin and you give yourself a good 5 minutes to chew it slowly, taste all the subtleties of flavor that come up as your saliva starts to break it down. 5 minutes feels like a very long time when you're chewing on just one raisin. Setting an attitude of gratitude. So for myself and for a lot of my patients, wake up in the morning, write down 3 things you're grateful for from the day before. And it's a great way of setting yourself into a positive mindset. Our stress, we're designed to deal with that acute danger and then have it ebb away and we go back into survival of the greater good of the survival of the tribe. But we have the internet, we know all about Syrian refugees, we know all about terrible things that are happening in the world. Some people like to relax while watching CSI and really intense events. We're under a lot of stress. We're looking after children, we're looking after parents, we're looking after neighbors. We have electricity, so I don't need to go to bed when it gets dark because I got a smartphone and a tablet and all of those things that can upset brainwaves. So one of the simplest things is just to get yourself back into that positive mindset where you're looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, which doesn't mean ignoring that bad things are happening, but how can I affect that? How can I become more positive and improve the lives around me? Eating mindfully. This is going to come up a lot. Every time we came to a different organ system, like, yeah, eating mindfully. Getting out of fight or flight before each meal. There's a couple ways of doing this when we're in that stress mode, which might be, I have a deadline and I have to keep doing this, or I'm driving down the road with my food. We want to get out of that fight or flight, to get back into the rest and digest. Breathing is the most simple. So you're sitting at your desk, you're sitting at your table, take 5 really slow, deep breaths. Tell yourself that you're in a safe place. When we're under stress, we breathe very shallowly and quietly so that the bear won't hear us. When we're in a state of relaxation, we can breathe much more deeply into our gut. That's going to tell the brain we're in a safe spot. If you're really high stress and you're in a private space, oh no, that's my next one. Visualization. So even little things like setting the table, saying grace, taking your time with your meal. If you really want to get out of fight or flight, sticking your legs up the wall. If you're lying on your back and you've got your legs up the wall, you're vulnerable. It's like a puppy going out to the big alpha dog and they roll on their back and they expose their abdomen. When you're lying on your back with your legs up, you're telling your body, like, I am definitely not in danger right now, because I couldn't be more vulnerable. So if you have a private office or just time in your home, stick your legs up the walls, breathe deeply, visualize, and get yourself into that nice state where you've got enzymes flowing. Stress management comes down to sleeping well, exercising, playing. We tend to do a lot of doing and not just, I'm going to go for a walk for the sake of doing something fun and silly. Setting the attitude of gratitude, that comes up a lot with me. And then there are herbs and supplements that help to support nervous system health, endocrine, the hormone, adrenal system. And we're not going to get into those this time. We'll be doing a lot of herbs that deal with digestion, but there's always options. Eating mindfully. I mean, for some people, I work like right in Yaletown, downtown, got a lot of corporate people. And it's just, do you eat through your lunch break? Oh yeah, I don't have time to stop doing that. Just, set a timer on your computer, give yourself 5 minutes. Do a few deep breaths, eat your food, but like be in that state where you can actually digest it and get the nutrients out. Otherwise, you're just kind of filling the void. Turn off the TV, turn off the reading materials. And I'll be honest, I find this hard. This is my time to do a crossword puzzle, and that's my other type of relaxation. But just okay, give yourself a few minutes. That'll still be there. You can do it after you finish, chewing that last mouthful. You can spend a few minutes. Set the table, light a candle, focus on what you're eating, and take a few deep breaths. And chew. There you go. There's going to be some repetition. Drill it all in. What could possibly go wrong in the mouth is this speeding or this speed eating, and who finishes at the table first. And we just kind of suck it all in and chow it down. This has never been my issue. I was always the kid at the table. Everyone else had left. I had to finish what was on my plate. I'm notoriously slow. But this, you want to make sure you're actually digesting and physically breaking down your food. I have a toddler right now, and I see him he's supposed to have 1 pea at a time. He'll grab handfuls, and then kind of just no! But he doesn't get it yet. And so he's not yet at a place where I can explain to him, you really need to chew this. And just, how much can you see that wince on his face? So maybe this is inbred in some of us, or inherent. So we want to slow down. It's not a race. We do want to actually take time. Meals are something that we're doing 2 to 7 times a day, depending on who you are. And we don't want to just bang through that in 5-10 minutes. This is how we actually nourish our systems. Every cell in your body is made of something that you ate or something that your mother ate. Choose good food. Take the time to let it become part of you. In the stomach, the issues are not having enough acid or not enough enzymes. Slowing down and helping that get there, we're back to mindful eating. We have to give the brain time to tell the body the food's coming in, give it time to release the enzymes. So, there's the reality of sometimes you're just going to a food counter and grabbing the sandwich or the salad. But, take the time while you're in line, look at the food, think about what it's going to taste like, get excited about it to let yourself start salivating and getting into that mindset. Breathe slowly and get into the mindful eating. Choose a nutrient-dense diet. Bitter herbs and foods, we'll start talking about some actual therapeutic treatments now, and sour, acidic, fermented foods. These ones lower pH. Our stomach is supposed to be acidic. When we're talking about having sort of an excess of acidity in the body and being more alkaline and alkaline diets and alkaline waters, we want the rest of our body to be more alkaline than acidic. In order to do that, we have to have a very acidic stomach. This is where we first break down the food, turn all that deliciousness into, ash, really fine particles that we can then absorb, suck up the minerals, suck up the amino acids, and become part of us. So a lower stomach pH improves pH elsewhere in the tissues. And we want them to be enzyme rich. So these fermented foods are naturally producing enzymes through the yeast and bacterial probiotic strains that are breaking it down for us. Whole foods diet, kind of self-explanatory. In order to support our stomach acid, there are some things we can do. A bunch of minerals are necessary. Predominantly we want to have zinc. So if we're low in stomach acid, zinc also affects our sense of smell. So if people just, I don't really care about food, whatever is cheap and easy, a bit of zinc might help to support their palate as they start to appreciate the flavors more. Maybe they don't like eating because it always gives them a bit of a tummy ache and things repeat on them. Having that zinc, increasing the stomach acid, digesting your food better, food becomes a much more enjoyable experience.
Tastes better.
Hi?
Tastes better too, yeah.
Yeah. We actually want to taste it. We want that sense of smell. Our taste buds only give us sour, salty, bitter, sweet, and umami, which is like earthy, bitter, mushroom meat. yeast flavor. We don't get any subtleties. If you think of when you have a cold, and you have a piece of apple versus a piece of potato, they kind of taste the same. You're not getting a lot of distinction. So it's having all of those aromas going up through our olfactory nerve into our brain. That's how we get the distinctions in food. So we want to get that zinc. We need a variety of vitamins. All of them are good, but just to pick one, B1 is involved in enzyme production and acid production. And our amino acids. Enzymes are proteins. Not all proteins are enzymes, but all enzymes are proteins. So they are made up of amino acids, holding hands like a chain of paper dolls. So it becomes a vicious circle. If someone isn't producing enough stomach acid, they're probably not going to be absorbing the enzymes from their food very well. It'll pass through the digestive tract and out into the waste. But that means they've got less of a pool to make the enzymes that'll help them to digest their food, to make more enzymes. So if we go down that vicious spiral of not absorbing enough means that you're now at a deficit for absorbing more, which means you can't absorb enough and you go down. So we want to, for some people, I'm just supplementing with pure amino acids to help get those up so that they can start making the enzymes so that they can then start digesting what they're putting into their mouths more effectively. So good nutrition is required for the absorption of good nutrition. So if someone is on that downward spiral, we want to bring it back up. Hi.
How do you recommend zinc supplementation? Or like how much or when do you take it?
I've got brands in mind that I work with, so I'd have to break that down and look at the label and see what could be comparable here. Yeah.
Would you take it with your meal or take it?
Generally on an empty stomach. So you want to take it so that there's nothing competing for the absorption. So you're taking your amino acids between meals. And for most people, it's just a temporary
Or I
thing.
mean more the zinc.
Oh, the zinc? Zinc with food. Yeah. Zinc on an empty stomach can make some people feel really nauseous. Even like the zinc lozenge. You're like, whoa. So for some people, that's a queasy thing. And in general, when we're talking about nutrients, we want our digestive activity happening, where things are going to start, breaking down. The zinc can piggyback in on, the pumpkin seeds or whatever else you're having with it. Hi.
I read that form of zinc arsenic was better. Is that true?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. No. Do you have that? Is that a new supplement? Yeah. I don't know. Maybe. I can go on PubMed. I probably will. I'm not good at saying I don't know. It means I'll just find out later. But
It's in one of the AOR.
okay. That's great because they have all their information online.
Yeah.
So I don't know yet, but I'll look into the research and how well it's absorbed. Yeah. There you go. So we want good nutrition so we can support good nutrition. So sometimes we need to supplement, but it's kind of just the training wheels to get to the point where you are digesting well as you make the lifestyle changes. That bitter flavor is key. So we have taste buds for sweet, sour, salty, umami, and we tend to eat a lot of those. There's like whole food industries dedicated to making sure we get enough salt and sugar in everything, that those chips become addictive and you can't have just one. Umami is pretty easy. Most people like meat and yeast extracts and mushrooms. Sour we like that. It's the bitter. We tend to shy away from it, and fair enough, it can be associated with, like a toxic mushroom kind of thing. But that bitter flavor, when we sense that on the tongue, that gets our whole digestive tract geared up. The stomach starts to release more acids and enzymes, the liver squeezes out its bile, the pancreas gets on board, the small intestine, the muscles get ready to move things along. So bitters are not something to take in a capsule. You have to get that bitter flavor. So we want to stimulate that vagus nerve for overall digestive support. There's a number of foods you can take, and you can look at food traditions, which I really love doing. If you look at different cultures around the world and their food combining or their food habits. So in some cultures, that bitter salad before the meal is a great way of stimulating the digestive tract. The Italians do it after the meal. So once everything's in, now we get the bitter herbs and start moving things along. Either way, those green vegetables come in really handily to start getting that stimulation happening. And then there's herbs. There's a lot of cultures on Earth that have an aperitif or a digestive that you would have before a meal. So a bunch of bitter herbs that monks have infused into a vodka or a liqueur that would be sipped slowly before the meal while you're preparing the food and getting ready to have it in. So we have, if we look at food culture, we already have this idea of having bitters kind of to set the stage, and whether it be in liquid or in food form.
Hungarian bitter.
Sorry?
Hungarian bitter.
Exactly. So you can have like a Campari or a Negroni or just even just some of the digestive bitters that like fancy liquor stores will sell that you're supposed to add to drinks. You can just have some of that in some soda water. My favorite though, Oh, we're going to come back to it. There is an actual digestive supplement that I really like. So I thought I had that slide there. Fermented foods we're going to come back to as well. I'm still kind of working my way through the system. In the pancreas, we can have not enough secretions, the liver not enough bile, or bile that is thick and sludgy, and that's going to sort of predispose us to sands and stones and issues that can affect the gallbladder. Again, we're back to bitter herbs and foods. When we're looking at foods that help to support the liver, if we're looking again at those detox pathways, foods that are rich in betaine. Betaine delivers a methyl group. This is something that we need for phase 2 detox. Beets are high in betaine, spinach, shrimp, the list goes on. I have to truncate it. For rich in sulfur, we're looking at any member of the onion family. So you can play around with chives and shallots and leeks and onions and garlic, and you get a variety. The brassicas are that whole family of cabbage and kale and broccoli and turnips and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and radishes. They're all part of that same group, and they're really, really rich in sulfur compounds, help to detox the liver. And then liver herbs, the classic being milk thistle, schisandra, turmeric, Oregon grapefruit, and again, the list goes on. We have a few in there. Back to the small intestine. So as I said, this is kind of becoming a big part of my practice, a big part of my focus. Not having enough secretions. So again, we're kind of back on working on the digestive formula. No time to cleanse. When we have this long 20-foot tube that is, we're pushing the food down and it's mulching through, sucking up all of the nutrients, we want to eventually get to a point where we have, say, 3 hours where we haven't taken anything in my mouth. The digestive system is able to get out of active nutrient absorption, and it goes into self-cleansing. And we see muscular contractions start moving down that small intestine. So it's like, you're kind of squeezing down an icing tube bag, and it's going to move it all along, dump everything in the large intestine, and then the valve between the two closes. So the ileocecal valve shuts off. There's so much focus on snacking and blood sugar balance and, you want to eat every 2-3 hours that a lot of people aren't having time to do those self-cleansing waves. And then we run into the issue of a bacterial overgrowth. So we want to have bacteria in the large intestine. That's where they are in the hundreds of billions. And our small intestine is relatively sterile. It's not completely sterile. But we have 2 hours to travel 20 feet. We want to be absorbing nutrients. If we hit a point where the bacteria is starting to overgrow, it becomes sort of sludgy and swampy. We have less effective ability to absorb nutrients because there's just too much bacterial mass in the way. So if I see someone who, they're anemic, we're putting them on iron supplementation, they are not responding. Their B12 is low and they're not responding. Calcium is low, whatever that nutrient may be. Excessive belching or flatulence, we start looking at bacterial overgrowth in that small intestine. So it's called SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. It's gaining a lot of momentum. And for IBS, it tends to be the leading consideration. And once you start treating it, people's lives just turn around. So the treatment for that, we want to get enzymes from living fermented foods so that we're supporting the enzymes that our own body is producing. So it's like we're outsourcing. I can do this, but if you give me some, from the sauerkraut, then it's just that much easier. It's a little bit of a heads up. Bitter herbs, again, that bitter flavor, vagus nerve, from the mouth all the way down. Mindful eating, again, this is a lot of repetition. And stop grazing. So even for blood sugar balancing, if I'm working with diabetics, I want to get to the point where we've got 3 square meals a day and no snacks. Partly because of the SIBO connection, partly so we get into a place where the body can start using up its own sugar supply. It's okay to be hungry once in a while, but we have this kind of phobia of I need to just keep having something. Oh, I got a little bit hungry, what if my blood sugar's crashing? So it's choosing the quality of foods where you can go 4 hours without having a snack. So you might need to manipulate your carbs and your protein and your fat levels in a particular meal in order to start extending that out. So it doesn't happen overnight, but remember, big 3 meal a day at a person. When we're looking at the large intestine, we have hundreds of billions of bacteria. They're not all going to be perfect to the ones that we want. You want to think of a lawn. If there's a few dandelions or bad seeds, that's okay. If it's kind of a yellow field of dandelions, then we want to get some work and some effect in there. So we're looking at the bad seeds, and then we'll start seeing excess gas, altered stool. So your classic IBS symptoms, cramping, bloating, they wake up with a flat stomach and kind of look pregnant after the first meal, and that doesn't go away. So again, coming down to the good quality foods, getting that nutrient density, choosing fibers that are going to help feed those bacteria, and whole foods, so minimally processed, and getting living probiotic bacteria from fermented foods. So we want to keep supplementing those good bacteria. About half of your fecal mass is bacterial waste. So we're constantly losing and shedding what we're taking in. Historically, we were getting it. We pull a carrot out of the ground, brush it off, have a few bites, we're getting some bacteria. We didn't have refrigeration, we let the apples sit around, starts getting a bit fizzy and tingly. We were getting these bacteria and yeasts in all the time, and we don't necessarily do that now. We pasteurize, we sterilize, we get a lot of prefab things. The bacteria are producing enzymes, they're also turning sugars into acids. So again, we're dropping the pH, we're providing enzymes, we're outsourcing some of our own digestive needs into the world of bacteria. So when we're looking at probiotic supplements, we kind of get this idea. Or here's a really good one, and I've got 50 billion in a capsule, so this is going to be great. But this is, a tulip farm. This is not what actually things look like. What we want to see is a bit more diversity. We want a variety of strains. We have 2,000 species, 7,000 strains. We want to be getting some diversity within each individual subset. And even then, more accurate is, we've got some yeast and we've got some bacteria and we've got a few that are in there kind of challenging the system, but we have a nice diverse ecology within our gut. So midpoint, and then we'll be blasting through. It's a little past halfway. Choosing whole foods, not processed foods. Because you're here tonight, I'm going to assume I'm fairly preaching to the choir and that you're already mindful of the foods that you choose if you're shopping at Health Essentials. Some great stuff. I always snoop. They've got some amazing things that I never see anywhere else, or I see here first. Eating mindfully and chewing thoroughly. Again, said that one before. Digestive bitters before. If you forget, you can do them after a meal. Some cultures, you've got the aperitif before the meal and the digestive afterwards. So you can have it both ways. And then fermentation. Into fermentation, it's an anaerobic process. It's a process that takes place in the absence of oxygen. And if we look into our intestines, it's an oxygen-free environment. Our large intestine is completely void of any oxygen, which makes it difficult when we're doing the Human Biome Project to access and research some of those bacteria, because as soon as they take the sample and they pull it out, boom, they're dead. So we've learned a lot about the human microbiome so far, and now they're having to get a lot more finicky and precise in their measurements of some of the other bacteria, and to keep it completely oxygen-free so we can see how they grow. But this happens in foods as well. Organic compounds, so namely sugar, are being converted into simpler compounds. So they're taking sugar and they're converting it into acids or alcohols, smaller things, they're releasing gases as a byproduct. In food, we're predominantly looking at bacteria and yeasts. Molds get in there with certain cheeses or cured meats. But really we're looking at the bacteria and yeast that like the sugar and produce the acids or the alcohols and the gases.
Question.
Hi.
Like, say, for instance, kombucha.
Yeah.
So popular.
Yeah, which we'll talk about.
And you feed it sugar.
Yeah.
For the SCOBY. And it's said that the SCOBY eats the sugar. How much sugar is actually in that kombucha then when you're finished?
Is the kombucha sweet when you taste it?
Usually.
Yeah, so then there's going to be some sugar left. So a lot of the, can I get to this more in like a few slides?
Yes.
Because I have a whole thing on kombucha, and we'll talk about medicinal ones versus what I call recreational kombuchas. But I mean, is it sweet is your first clue of, yeah, there's still sugar in here. So if you let it go longer, it'll become more and more acidic and turn into like an apple cider vinegar. And then you know all the sugar's been consumed. That's the quick answer. I'm going to skip that slide. Essentially, we have bacteria all over the world, and it differentiates by location, just like we have bacteria all over our body, and it differentiates by location. So what we have in our mouth isn't necessarily what's growing in our small intestine, isn't what's growing on our skin. But diversity in life. Fermented foods have always been there. They were here before we were here. They've always been part of that human experience, so we kind of adapted with them. It was already here. You find, that partially rotten grape and still get it, or a really bruised peach and it kind of might have a bit of a fizz. It predates refrigeration. Refrigeration is relatively new, a couple hundred years. So that early food, or even just 100 years, that early food preservation, you take the apples, these are all going to go. How do we keep these calories available throughout the winter? And we turn them into ciders or turn tomatoes into ketchup, turn cucumbers into pickles, but we let the bacteria do their job so that we end up with nutrition sustained for months on end. And there's a number of them. Anything from the vegetables, from your sauerkraut and kimchi, to the classic pickles, meats, some meats and dairy products, some animal products are cured, and beer and wine. But nowadays, so if we think historically, this would be made by taking cucumbers, putting it into a salt brine. The salt starts, through osmotic pressure, pulling out the sugars. The bacteria living on the outside of that cucumber start to digest those sugars, turn them into acids, give it enough time, you end up with a nice, very sour, kosher pickle. Nowadays, we take the cucumbers, they put it into a vinegar bath directly, and we end up with a very consistent flavor, but none of those nutritional benefits. Likewise with sauerkrauts, right? We ferment the cabbage, slice it thinly, put the salt, suck it out, squeeze out all of the air by putting a heavy stone on top, allow it to ferment. But now, we're going to keep it consistent, pasteurize it, put it in a bottle on the shelf. So you're buying a sauerkraut, you want to get it from the refrigerator section around the edge of the store, not from the middle of a store where it's got a long shelf life. We pasteurize all of our alcohol products now and ferment them after we ferment them. But it actually begins that process of digestion. So if we eat the tomato, we have to munch it up, digest it all the way through. If you have a traditional ketchup where it's been fermented by lactic acid bacteria, that digestion process has already started. It's providing enzymes. It's now going to help us digest everything else that we take with that food. So it begins that process of breaking it down. We're outsourcing it. And fermentation process vary. So if you're looking at wines from one particular vineyard and that same varietal, it changes year after year. And you're using the same yeast. So there's a lot of variety that happens in fermentation. Part of the breakdown, so if we look at glycoside, in the Latin, this is sugar-containing molecule. So it's big and bulky. We have a compound that the plant made. So the plant is taking in carbon dioxide, solar energy, it's making a sugar molecule. But there's bacteria and yeast all over the outside of it, and it doesn't want to share that, so it attaches it onto something. So it might attach a bunch of sugars together and make a starch. That is now difficult for the yeast to get at. It's sequestered it away. Maybe it's making a fat, and it puts a sugar on there, we end up with a glycolipid. The yeast and bacteria can't get at that very easily. Maybe it's making an alkaloid to protect against the wasp larvae that's crawling up the stem and it's wanting to repel it, and it attaches the sugar molecule onto that. So the sugars are being kind of tucked away within the plant, and a lot of plants don't taste sweet when we taste them. Through fermentation, the microbes start acting on that, physically making it smaller. So we're taking this big glycoside, and we end up with an aglycone, so a without sugar molecule, and the individual sugar. The yeast and bacteria can gobble that up. These are now smaller, freer, and more absorbable into our digestive tract. So it's less effort that we need to put in when we're consuming the fermented foods. Does that make sense? Through fermentation, we're releasing nutrients, so the minerals that are trapped within that food, through the fermentation process, become more bioavailable, partly through the lower pH, partly through changes in sort of physical structure of that food. So if we have milk, yes, it contains calcium. Very poorly absorbed, difficult for us to get into our system. But let the microbes get there first and turn it into yogurt or kefir. It physically changes the structure of the casein and whey and the fat, and that calcium is much more bioavailable once it's coming from a fermented dairy source. Likewise with your kombucha and your kimchis and your sauerkrauts. We're releasing minerals by dropping the pH and beginning that digestive process. The phytochemicals that are in those glycoside molecules, those are now more bioavailable. So, quercetin is a glycoside. It's great for allergies, but we need to metabolize that, break it down in order to get into our system. Allow things to ferment, and we have more of that bioavailable. Amino acids are available, so you start breaking that down. Through fermentation, some brand new items become available. B vitamins start joining the scene because the yeast and bacteria produce them, and they now end up in that substrate. So Marmite, Vegemite, these yeast extracts were originally designed as sort of B vitamin supplements as a way of fortifying the population through fermentation with yeast. New amino acids. So they've taken some of these, they've modified them slightly. We now have some new amino acids. They're producing enzymes that are going to help us to digest our food, and they're producing organic acids. Drop the pH, gives it that sour cabbage, sour milk, sour whatever flavor, but also helps to support our own stomach acid. We want that low pH. So again, think of it as a fire. It's going to burn up whatever we take in by mouth. Part of that is to protect us from pH-sensitive pathogens. The good bacteria, those lactic acid bacteria, they're producing acids. They like an acidic environment. They do all right. But Salmonella doesn't like acid. So if we have that good, strong fire in our stomach, we're going to kill them off. They're not going to be able to penetrate through and cause disease and illness. So they're a big part of our protection. They help us to digest our proteins. It's that first stage of protein digestion where we have, this chain of amino acids that's all wrapped up and becomes a globular protein structure. It goes into the acid bath and unravels. Now our enzymes can start to break it down. And a big part of mineral absorption as well. So we want to have that low pH in the stomach so that we're absorbing minerals and therefore neutralizing acids elsewhere in our tissues and ending up with more alkaline joints and muscle tissue. The beneficial bacteria, and again we're learning so much more, but a quick breeze through because there's always something new. They help us to digest our food. They're releasing enzymes. They're a big part of our digestive power. They help to maintain that healthy immune response. They are communicating with our immune system, which is friendly with them and recognizing that they're non-dangerous, and saying, you know what, an E. coli just popped through. You guys might want to jump on that. So there's this communication happening between the microbiome and the friendly flora lining our digestive tract and our immune cells within. They're producing bacteriocins. These are natural antibiotics to kill off other bacteria. So like anything with a genetic code, they want to kill off their neighbors and make room to grow themselves and propagate their own genetic material. So, E. coli will kill off Salmonella, Lactobacillus acidophilus will kill off E. coli. They're all fighting each other, but they'll also kill off their own species. So Lactobacillus acidophilus is fighting other Lactobacillus acidophilus because you're different and I want my own genetic code to go forward. So they're all kind of arguing and rallying for top position. What was that last one? Yeah, producing vitamins, again, sort of digesting the food, helping us to eliminate waste. So again, about half of our stool is bacterial mass. So we want to make sure we have those regular bowel movements so that we're eliminating those toxins that the liver just puts so much effort into breaking down. If we don't, if we have sluggish digestion, if we have constipation, the liver has just taken that estrogen or that herbicide, it's metabolized it, it's dumped it into the colon, things are moving really slowly along, it can get reabsorbed. Now the liver has to do it again, it's not moving on to fresh toxins, and we end up with a bit more of a toxic system. Helping to maintain healthy cholesterol, so that bile that the liver is producing, is the starting material is cholesterol. So we have that bowel movement, the brown is generally bile waste from blood vessel or blood cell byproducts. As that's being eliminated, we now have to steal from our cholesterol pool to make more bile salts to metabolize the fats and to carry that out of the system. Again, if the bile salts get reabsorbed through a sluggish digestive tract, we don't need to make new stuff, cholesterol levels can start to rise. So everything links in. We can't separate digestive function from cardiovascular health, mental health, liver health, endocrine health. And again, fermented foods are rich in all of those things, the beneficial bacteria. Which brings me to my favorite probiotic, because it is so different than anything else on the market. It's the Dr. Ohira's. He's a Japanese microbiologist. He starts with 12 strains of bacteria that are... Ah!
Yes.
I'm not touching anything. Deer in headlights. Mine's still there. Is it just that? Anyway, 92 fruits, vegetables, mushrooms, and seaweeds, and 12 strains of bacteria, and allows those to ferment together for 3 years. So it's in a wing of the building in Japan, thank you, where that isn't insulated. So in the winter, the temperature gets really cold. Those bacteria in the mix that are susceptible to cold die off, but the strongest survive, and they're the ones that are going to get the food and propagate and multiply. In the summer, it gets very hot. Those that are weak and susceptible to heat die off. The strongest multiply, divide, replicate. Meanwhile, we have 12 strains all fighting for resources. They want the food, they're producing bacteriocins to kill off their neighbor. So there's a competitive element to it. So at the end of natural fermentation for 3 years, we end up with sort of a survival of the fittest scenario, where these bacteria have been temperature stressed. Some are winter, some are winter, some are winter. So it's oscillated. They've been fighting with each other and vying for top position. And then that whole paste just gets encapsulated and is delivered to you. So it's never centrifuged. If we look at the other bacteria being grown on, say, a dairy culture or a brown rice culture, they then get put through a big centrifuge. The bacteria come off to the edge. They're separated from their growth food, put into a capsule. We're trusting that they're going to resuscitate, that they're going to find food, that they're not going to kill each other off. So we start playing with the numbers and coming up with higher numbers to allow for all of those what ifs this doesn't work. Whereas these ones, they've never been centrifuged or isolated. They're still in their probiotic forms. It's like you've had kimchi and you've just let it go year after year, hot, cold, and we end up with this fully digested paste. And that makes them naturally heat stable. They've done 3 summers. So I have these in my briefcase, I have them in my car. I don't worry if it's a hot day like today that my probiotics might be getting worse for wear. They've done 3 summers. They're all these are the survivors. One guy I spoke to says he describes these as the street kids, and the other bacteria as the trust fund babies. These are the ones that they've already been stressed. They've been around the block. They're just looking for a new home where they can multiply and get at your foodstuffs. Other fermented products, so here's we're going to talk about a kombucha, and it's a very medicinal kombucha. All of the fermented botanicals, so kombucha is fermented black tea. So this company starts with organic black tea, makes an infusion, like you're at home with your teapot, adds organic sugar, and then they add kefir grains, which is a symbiotic culture of yeast and bacteria, and they allow it to ferment all the way through to completion. So it takes several months, and by the time you're done, it tastes like apple cider vinegar. So the daily dose is 2 teaspoons twice a day. It's a very concentrated medicinal product. When you're looking at some of the delicious kombuchas that are out there, you want to make sure you read the label. Some of them are great, living strains right on there. Once you open it, you can see, and if you don't drink it for a while, you'll see the SCOBY, which is a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. They'll start to develop, and you get kind of that thick mother, like the oyster type stuff at the bottom. That it's going to keep going. But I've seen some kombuchas out there that are pasteurized, have carbonated water, and I'm like, okay, so we're just putting it on the label as a sales pitch. So just make sure you're getting one that is a raw ferment. But if it tastes sweet, it has sugar. And so it is not your medicinal product for fighting candida or really shifting your ecology. It's a great alternative to sweetened sparkling soda on a hot summer's day. So they have their place. But when are you just having it for the sake of deliciousness and maintaining what's already going well in your system? And when do we actually want to take that ship and send it in a different direction? And then you want the medicinal product.
I've just started making my own.
Okay.
And I think the first batch probably went too long, but is that probably better then?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want the acids, you want the bacteria. As long as it keeps propagating, then you know you haven't killed them off, and yeah. So you'll know by the taste. If it's sweet, it has sugar. If it's really sour, that's all done. All of that sugar has been converted. Kombucha, by definition, is fermented black tea. So what these guys are doing is now making what we just call fermented botanicals, because we can't use the word kombucha, and using other herbs. So we have milk thistle, same idea. This is a fantastic herb for the liver. They make an infusion out of the seeds, add the organic sugar, add the kefir grains, allow it to ferment all the way through to completion, and bottle that. So we now have a product that's got liver support, as well as gut and digestive health, the enzymes, the bacteria, the B vitamins. Oregano, we have a fantastic one that's antimicrobial, so it's very effective at killing off candida, but it's also supplying good bacteria at the same time. So that's a wonderful sort of nutritional boost to the system.
How much a day?
They all say 2 teaspoons twice a day.
Okay.
There's no real upper limit. So I brought home, I always have the oregano on hand. It's my go-to, it's always in the fridge. And my husband got sick, so I pulled it out. I went to work, I came back, he'd finished the bottle. I was like, that was a 2-week supply. He's like, well, it made the water taste good. So it's fine. And when they've done tests on the animals, which is par for the course, any product that's being brought to market, the lab rats get healthier and healthier and healthier and healthier. Whereas oregano oil has a lethal dose, which would be very hard for us to hit. We'd have to drink gallons and stuff. But it does have a point, it'll kill the good bacteria, and take it too much, it goes beyond our liver's ability to detoxify it. When it's fermented, the microbes are pre-digesting it, making it very bioavailable for us. So great antimicrobial and a great antispasmodic. So you got that really whoopy cough or gripey guts than the oreganos. The fermented turmeric ginger, this is your inflammation support, again a bit of liver boost. It's clear. When you pour it out, I mean, curcumin is this bright pigment. It stains fabric, it stains your skin. But by letting the microbes get in there and digest it, they're turning that very difficult to digest curcumin into tetrahydrocurcuminoids, so they're other THC, and that makes it more bioavailable, absorbable into the system, and still has that anti-inflammatory effect. So it's what we're hoping our gut is doing when we take in non-digestible foods. We're breaking them down. So all of this is happening in a sterile, controlled laboratory. The holy basil is an adaptogenic herb, helps us respond to stress. So if we're looking at that brain and stress being our first problem with digestion, having holy basil, we're taking care of that brain stress. We're also supporting the gut, the enzymes, the B vitamins, the acids. So all of them are supplying. Hi.
Are these safe to take every day?
They are safe for every day. The oregano one says do not use beyond 6 weeks without, and that's, we just want to confuse Health Canada.
What, sorry?
We didn't want to confuse Health Canada. So they just see oregano, it's like, okay, oregano oil, lethal dose, limited.
Okay.
That being said, if you don't need to take it every day, you know, it's one I keep on hand for if I get sick. I have HIV positive patients, they're on it every day.
I'm taking it every day.
Yeah.
Just 1 teaspoon, just because I.
It helps.
Through.
Yeah. Yeah. And there you go, so 1 teaspoon. So you find your balance. If you're having major digestive issues, you know, you might want to do 2 teaspoons 3, 4, 5 times a day. Just keep putting it in your water bottle and sipping it down. As your system acclimatizes, you can wean off. Same with the Dr. Harris. I don't take it daily, but it's everywhere. It's in my car, it's in my bag, it's in my office, it's at home. I never run out. I always have a good 60 ahead of what I need to do. Hi.
Is it good to switch up your probiotics? Get different strains from different.
Yeah.
Is it-
It depends on the individual. I still haven't found, as much as I love the Dr. Harris, I still haven't found one probiotic that works for absolutely everybody that I deal with. So there is some dancing around that needs to be done. I'm also working with people to change their diets, to get more fermented foods in, you know, try and shift so it isn't just, you know, the bread and cheese and pop a few pills.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're looking at their own thing. So that is a bit more of an individual. There are some strains that are more particular for like Lactobacillus rhamnosus. I do a lot of work with autism, and that's really good for helping autistic kids. So it kind of depends on the individual a little bit as to which strain I would choose. The Dr. Harris for me is easy because it's 12. So I'm kind of, it's got the rhamnosus, it's got the bacillus, it's got everything that I generally need.
Well, there's
But
one
in-
BSL number 3. It's
Yeah.
150
It's
million
huge,
pounds.
yeah.
Is
If you've got Crohn's, maybe. I don't think that's an everyday use product for most people. And it's only 1 strain. And I want the diversity. I'd rather have 12
is it only
strains.
one strain?
I believe so. I believe so. So I want diversity and start mimicking sort of that maintenance. But it depends, where are you on the health to illness continuum and what do you need? So I don't have a flat out answer to that. For most people, I don't think so. For some people, yes. It's all great. Hi.
Hi, you said you don't take the Dr. O'Hara's every day?
No.
No,
I do these. I do fermented foods at home.
because I'm taking the Dr.
Yeah.
O'Hara's. And
If
I
you
take
need it,
every
right,
day.
there are some people.
What's the need, like how, you need it?
So the final result, the digestive tract is the window into your system. If you have the perfect poops, you're doing well.
Yeah.
If you start deviating from that, then you want to come back to normal. So for perfect poops, we're looking at sort of shaped like a banana, half sink, half swim, not too buoyant, not too heavy, medium brown, not too light, not too dark, not too gray, not too yellow, easy to pass, very, very little on the toilet paper when you clean up afterwards. If you're not having that, you might want to be doing it on a more regular basis. And when you start seeing yourself deviate, like, oh God, I'm getting stressed. Or that food is a little spicier than I thought it might be. And when you start veering off course, and you can see it every day, sometimes 3 times a day, and you'll know then if you need to be taking another one. So, yeah. Hi.
Do they go hand in hand?
Yeah, you can use them both. So I think of the fermented botanicals more upper GI because they taste so acidic. We're delivering the acids, we're starting to get things moving along. And the doctor here is generally as a capsule for lower digestive health.
I see.
I also get people to, if they've got periodontal disease, to brush, floss, and then chew on at night. So we're repopulating from the top down. So we go both ends. Hi.
You mentioned Crohn's.
Yeah.
The reference, are you suggesting one of those for Crohn's?
The doctor here has great sort of testimonials and research online. So you get, there's like Crohn's forums, and like, he's a doctor here, and blah. and I use it successfully with patients there too. You generally need to go higher. So it's recommended 2 capsules a day. If they they're actively flared up, you might need to avoid it until you get things stable. So it's really working with the individual, but sometimes they're going up to 8 capsules a day to really supply and balance out that immune system because it's an autoimmune issue. So, yeah, hi.
How do we know that it gets through the stomach acid?
You want to take it with food. So always probiotics with food. Partly that's the fermented food way. They're right there in the meal. Our stomach should be, that hot fire. To use a different analogy, let's think of like really, really hot tea. If you add the milk into the tea, you can scald the milk. If you put the milk in the bottom of the cup, then add the tea, then you're bringing that temperature up. So likewise, our stomach should be acidic. Once we've got food in there, that pH is coming up just because it's been buffered by what's in our food already. That helps the bacteria to pass through without being damaged. So taking it with food.
Food first and then follow.
Yeah, just have it, at some point while things are going to be actively digesting. Food is staying in your stomach about 2 hours as well. So if you do it right before them, you just, whenever you remember.
He's told to take it at bedtime.
The doctor hears?
Yeah.
If you're doing it for oral disease, then I would brush and floss and go from the top down. But otherwise, generally you want to take probiotics with food.
With food, okay.
Yeah. If ever I'll always dig around and do the research, but if ever I'm like, new superfood or new way of doing it, what's the original food source? What would make sense to my great-great-grandparents? And with fermented foods, they're foods with the bacteria in them. So there's sort of a wisdom there that okay, that's going to pass through. But if we have that really, really low pH, that can destroy some of the bacteria.
So in other words, those fermented food we eat twice a day, eat with the meal?
Or just before the meal.
Oh, just
Yeah, because then we're dropping the pH even further, and these ones, they're in an acidic environment. So you're tasting that really sour pucker.
so you take those just
Yeah, so I do them as sort of the aperitif, the digestive. I sometimes even do them in a wine glass. Make it fun. Try to make it fun.
Do teas and coffees have to be acidic before you eat?
Tea, no. Especially if you're adding milk to it. That's going to buffer
But
the
if
acidity.
you don't have the milk?
Tea, no.
No?
No, not unless it's fermented. Black tea, it's probably fermented. Coffee, a little bit. Not a ton. I mean, they're not sour. They're you know that the acid when you taste it. Yeah. Coffee moves things along. Coffee is so, yeah.
It's bitter.
It's bitter, for sure. Yeah, you'll get that element. It's high antioxidant. You just want to choose good coffee. Yes, so all of the fermented botanicals, we've got the living probiotic strains, the B vitamins that help with energy, the digestion of fats and proteins and carbs. We actually get those nutrients into our system. They all supply enzymes that'll help you digest the meal that's following afterwards, and supplying the acids to drop the pH. And then different effects based on the herb, and we went over that. So if you want to have inflammation, with your immune and digestive support, choose the turmeric ginger. If you want to have endocrine and nervous system support with the immune and the digestion, choose the holy basil. If you just want overall antioxidant, think of a tea, like a green tea with all those antioxidants, this one's been digested by bacteria. With the immune support and the digestion, choose the kombucha. So you're just picking and choosing based on where you're at and what you need. So. Here we go. This is what I should have mentioned earlier. The digestive bitters. These are currently on back order, but they should be in next week. So I don't know if there's a concession to be made because they're not available for purchase right now, unfortunately. But I rely on these a lot. There are a number of bitter products. Many of them have a laxative in there. They have senna as part of their ingredient list or aloe. And not everyone needs to have a laxative, and certainly not every day. These ones are it's just the bitter herbs. So the only laxative effect is coming from getting the liver to pump out more bile, and the bile being our own best laxative that keeps things moving along in our system. So to digest that bitter flavor again, we're releasing stomach acid, which we need for the digestion of proteins. We're releasing bile from the gallbladder, which we need for the digestion of fats. And we're releasing enzymes from the pancreas, which we need for the digestion of carbohydrates. So no matter what you are trying to digest, the bitters will help. If you're unsure of what you're digesting poorly, you can look at your gas. We talked about perfect poop, let's talk about gas. If you have lots of volume but very little odor, you're generally not digesting carbohydrates well. If you have very concentrated odor, then it's generally fats and proteins that you're not digesting well. And essentially they're just rotting and putrefying in the gut and creating that potent smell. If you have both, lots of odor and lots of volume, then you really really need the bitters to help balance it all out and support everything.
So that as well as the other two things, probiotics and
Yeah.
fermenteds.
Yeah.
When do you take this?
This ideally before a meal, and ideally 10 to 15 minutes before. So it's while, we've got the brain stage, we're, chopping the vegetables, we've got things sauteing, we're getting mindful about the food, and then you're having the bitters, and it's going to start preparing the system for digestion. But people forget, in which case do it in the middle of your meal, do it after your meal, and it'll help to move things through. Some people forget until they're like, oh, I'm so bloated and that is not sitting well. Then, oh, I really should have something. So you take the digestive bitters then. It's a little late after the fact. I like to be preventative. But life happens and you forget, or you're in a restaurant. If you're in a restaurant, just get the hot lemon slices. You got the sour from the lemon, you've got the bitter from the rind. Not too much water, we don't want to dilute all of our enzymes, but so there's ways around it. But I really like this one because it's got some peppermint in there. It's a nice digestive aid without being a laxative. So the final summary, what we talked about, is that you aren't what you eat, but you are what you absorb. So eating is fine, but what's actually passing through on the other side? How is your digestive tract extracting these nutrients? What are they getting out of it? It's a complex process. We have many organs. We talked about 7 of them. Many glands, thousands of cells that are all cooperatively working together so that the good food that you take in gets passed in a beautiful banana-shaped half-sink, half-swim image. If you don't have that, we know we need to give you some support. If there's any discomfort, if there's belching, if there's mucus, if there's blood, if there's undigested food showing up, there's all of these clues when you look in the toilet that something might be off and that we need to get some influence happening. It can go awry at any number of places. And the best of it, we get on a good habit, and then you have that stressful day, or you get that bad piece of news, or the food is contaminated, or whatever it may be. There's always ways, you fall off the wagon, you can easily get back on. But if this is a chronic thing, we gotta jump on that. Intimately linked to immune function. So when I have a visual that I use with my patients, at the bottom of the pyramid is diet, digestion, and detox. We have to start there. So liver function, optimizing nutrients, the microbiome, food allergies, what are you taking in, how well are you processing it, how well are you absorbing it. From there we can start looking at the individual cells, looking at inflammation and mitochondria and heavy metals and things that might be a problem, antioxidants. Then start looking at hormones and neurotransmitters, then get at the immune system. So we kind of work our way up. There's no point trying to target the immune system if we have faulty digestion somewhere along the way. It is so foundational. Diet and digestion influence our whole body health. My oncology prof says, or he quoted it from somewhere else, but we dig our own graves with our knives and forks. We pick our meals, and we also want to make sure that we're absorbing well and we're getting what we need out of it. And then the final summary, which really is my last slide. Eat mindfully. Have we talked about that? Eat mindfully, chew thoroughly. This is, if there's one thing, it's not about taking more pills. It's what state are you in when you're receiving nutrition that is going to become you. Your liver is regenerating constantly. The cells that line your small intestine are sloughing off every 24 to 48 hours and being rebuilt. What kind of fuel and Lego pieces are you using to rebuild them? Eat mindfully, chew thoroughly. Choose nutrient-dense foods. 80-20, life should have some treats, but choose nutrient-dense, good quality, organic, fair trade chocolate if you need a treat. And choose foods specific for particular organs. We can support liver health. If we look at Chinese medicine, spring is the season for liver regeneration. It's when there are fresh green shoots and sour things and bitter things and things are underripe. We can start stimulating and getting our liver cleansing and get that ball rolling. By summer, we're into small intestine. So all that nutrient density, the harvest, the farmers markets, what are we getting into our system? We can move through different particular organs and support them with our food and our herbs. Digestive bitters before and or after, if you forget or if you really need that digestive boost. That does everything. We've got stomach acid support with enzymes, pancreas, liver, and small intestine functions. Fermented foods with meals, they're going to help provide the acids, the enzymes, the B vitamins, the beneficial strains of bacteria. Think of historical diet, your sort of classic burger and beer. The meat would hopefully be fresh and pasture and wild and recently caught. The bread would be sourdough, so we have microbes digesting the grains, making them more digestible. Pickles from fermented cucumber, ketchup from fermented tomatoes. And then the beer would be naturally fermented. Like we had all of this digestive support just with our meals, and we don't do that now. So we want to start mimicking that and trying to get back to what our ancestors did in a modern day scenario. And we're done. And that's an hour and a quarter, so thank you very much for your time. Open for questions as long as people want to stay and ask them. There's always people who don't want to ask questions live, whether they're shy or it's a personal subject, but I'll stay till all questions are answered, be it now or later. Are there, hi.
And what about the, we're buying alkaline ones, that kind of thing, and trying to make our whatever is more alkaline than acids. I'm not sure how this fits in with, we want it to be acidy, but then we want alkaline too. I'm not sure how to do that.
So if you're having alkaline water, definitely not with your meal. Definitely not like right before the meal. In general, we don't want to have too much water with our food. We don't want to dilute it. Sometimes you get thirsty, or you just want to have something, but you can even just make like the water with some lemon in it and keep that. Am I in digestion and nutrient absorption mode, like at breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Or am I in self-cleaning, letting my system re-equilibrate, having that break between meals, my small intestines flushing, liver's, the gallbladder's loading up again with a fresh source of bile, then we can go more alkaline. So just sort of time it, ebb and flow. We want to be acidic when we digest, and then we can focus on alkaline the rest of the time. Yeah. Hi.
Would an apple cider vinegar roll into that digestive food?
No, well, more into the fermented botanicals, particularly if it's still a live one where you see the mother at the bottom. If it hasn't been pasteurized, it will have the acids, the enzymes, the beneficial yeast and bacteria, and the B vitamins in there. And that's great before a meal as well.
So having a glass of red wine or beer before a meal is not a bad idea?
Yeah. I can't ask patients to do what I won't. I like a glass of wine with my meal. Yeah. I would prefer it if it was non-pasteurized, which is hard to get at LCBO. Sour beers are making a comeback, the lambics. They're getting a bit more digestive oomph there. They're an acquired taste, so. But yeah, I'm not averse. If you have signs of yeast overgrowth, then no. So again, I get a little bit more particular, where some people it's absolutely no beer and wine, other people, yeah. Life needs to be fun. And they can help digest. Hi.
When you have like soup or bone broth or something to do, like how does that affect your, we were talking about the fluids or
Yeah.
that?
Well, soups in general. I mean, anything, you've got the nutrients in there. We're not really just diluting it just by washing away with tons and tons of water. So yeah, bone broth is, great. And for all the benefits that it does. Yeah. Hi.
What food should I be concentrating on? Because I have acid reflux.
Okay. So some foods probably irritate you, like the tomatoes and cranberries as it is. Are you on medication for it? Okay, perfect. So much harder to deal with PPIs. The more you can start getting, it depends. So when we have acid reflux, our stomach needs to be very, very acidic. When we have that low pH of like 1.5 to 3 in our stomach, that tells the sphincter at the top to close. So then food comes in, and it comes, and then it can't splash back up. If we're not producing enough stomach acid, and it declines every decade, maybe we don't have enough zinc, maybe you're stressed or not eating mindfully or anything, then that sphincter can stay open, and the acid splashes back up. If that is sort of a mild or a temporary thing, then just having the bitters and or an acid before a meal to drop the pH and close that sphincter. For some people, the acid's been splashing up for so long it's irritated the tissue, and taking the apple cider vinegar hurts. So play with that. You might need the bitters to start to teach your body what to do. So the acidic things are kind of like giving the man a fish. Like, here's a bunch of acid, drop the pH, here you go. The bitters are more like teaching the man to fish, or teaching the body to create more acid. So that would give you a bit more time, but we want to get that pH lower so that the sphincter learns how to close again. So yeah, so more sours, more bitters. If it hurts, then you've got some damage and you need to do some reparation first. So, yeah.
It doesn't hurt, but
good.
Yeah.
Good.
But I've noticed that after 5 o'clock, I can't seem to eat anymore.
Okay. Yeah, we've got to work on increasing the stomach acidity so that sphincter closes. Because you should be able to lie down at night without having acid rise up.
Will it close?
If it hasn't been damaged, right? If it's been happening for a long time, and it's been damaged, there might be scar tissue that can prevent it from closing down the road. So maybe, maybe not, I don't know. Depends on the extent of the damage. Hi.
What do you suggest for taking to heal if there's inflammation from the acid splash?
Slippery elm, which comes in nice lozenges, so you can use it either like as a sore throat if you're a singer or someone who speaks a lot. Deglycerized licorice, so DGL lozenges, really soothing. It's like putting aloe on a sunburn. So either of those, slippery elm lozenges or DGL
What
lozenges.
about aloe vera gel?
Aloe vera gel should be fine. If it's a leaf gel, then it might have the laxative effect, but as long as it's just the soothing gel, then that's fine. Put that in water. But yeah, but then you want to go into a healing stage, then you're working on the acids and the bitters to stop that.
Marshmallow root.
Marshmallow, great. Yeah. So it's a whole family just called demulcents. So it's very soothing herbs. Yeah. But slippery elm and DGL are nice because they come in lozenge. And then you just got them in your
I
pocket.
haven't been able to find lozenges. I've tried the slippery elm powder and it was
They have.
We are out of stock right
But generally they have.
now.
Usually. Thayer's for the slippery elms. And you have DGL lozenges as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had your DGL.
Yeah. Hi.
What if you don't have gallbladder? What's the impact of this?
Yeah, then you just need to be mindful of how much fat you take in at one meal. Because you have a slow drip of bile rather than the nice big oomph of lots of it all at once. So yeah. Hi.
What happens if, you've been carrying gallstones for years and it's, so of course your bile's not
Yeah.
good and it's elevating your liver functions?
Yeah.
What do you focus on then?
That's a tricky one. There's 4 stages of bile thickness or issues. We start off with just sludge, which is kind of thick, then it becomes sand, then it becomes gravel, then it becomes stones. There's herbs that help to move things along. If we know you're in a sludge or sand scenario, then herbs that help to squeeze it are going to be great and kind of flush. But if you've got stones and we start trying to get things moving, that can actually block. And then that's an emergency situation, ER, surgery, bad. So part of it is maybe an ultrasound seeing where you're at.
Well, with stones.
You are actually at the stone level.
Stones and it's elevating liver function.
Yeah, there are some herbs that help to break down the stones. It might be surgery, but they're not just going to drain it. They're going to want to take out the whole thing.
Well, I've had it for 20 years.
Really?
No
Yeah.
attacks.
Sorry?
No attacks.
No attacks.
So I'm not having surgery.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, there are some herbs. Chanca piedra is one that comes to mind. It's called stone breaking root. It's an Ayurvedic herb. So I would work with someone so that you've got Hi.
Hi, I missed the probiotic that you were talking about.
Dr. O'Hear's.
No, with autism.
Oh, with autism, lactobacillus rhamnosus, which is in Dr. O'Hear's.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
RHAMNOSUS.
Which one is it in?
It's in the Dr. O'Hear's probiotic.
There's a whole bunch of.
There's 12 strains in there,
gotcha,
and
yeah.
lactobacillus rhamnosus is one
Okay,
of them.
that's good.
Yeah, and it essentially just really helps to break down wheat and dairy enzymes or proteins that can then interfere with brain function. Hi.
Just, I kind of didn't quite understand the explanation you gave for the acid reflux thing. So are you saying that if you have acid reflux, to kind of treat it or kind of keep it down,
Yeah.
you want to introduce acids to your stomach?
For most people.
Which would promote your sphincter
The sphincter here.
close?
Yeah.
Close?
Yeah. So for most people, acid reflux is an indication of not enough stomach acid. But you're feeling the burn as it splashes up out past that open sphincter and causes irritation on the esophagus, which then hurts. So we want to take the antacid. That's going to raise the pH more, and you kind of create a vicious cycle. 2 ways of doing it. You can take hydrochloric acid pills sequentially over time and see where your cutoff is and get an idea of how much stomach acid you're producing. Another method is to use baking soda. And if you can swallow baking soda and not, think of your grade 8 science experiments, if you're not belching a lot, then you're just not producing enough stomach acid. So you can either go by adding acid to assess whether you have too much or too little, or adding an alkaline to assess whether you have too much or too little, and then going from there. But most people, it's about 5 to 10% who are excess acid producers, and that's usually from some sort of stomach tumour.
But how does that relate to, everything I've read tells you to try to eat alkaline food, to try to get your body back to an alkaline state. So how does that relate to
It's
acid
the
reflux?
byproduct when you break it down. So if we look at lemons, they are acidic. We know that. You taste them more out. We put them on litmus paper. They are acidic. Analogy, we put logs on a fire, it breaks down into ash. We take in that lemon, we digest it. The ash that is left over, because there's such high mineral content, is actually alkaline on the tissues. So it's acidic coming in, but once our digestive system is done with it, we now have an alkaline substance that can then neutralize acids elsewhere in our body.
So you're
Does it support the stomach, making it more acid?
It will help, yeah, it'll drop the pH. So that's where a lemon slice in water before the meal is good
And then
too.
it goes on to help the liver.
Yeah, if you get the rind in there as well.
You
Yeah.
gotta have the rind to help the liver.
The rind helps the liver because you've got the bitter flavors in the rind. And then the acid in the lemon juice helps the stomach itself. It's always the whole wisdom, the whole plant generally is so much better than part. But did that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then you had one.
Yeah, is there any pickles, sauerkrauts, anything like that you can find?
That are
or
still raw?
wild?
Yes, wild brine, you have a selection downstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, with pickles, sauerkraut.
Yeah. Buddy's Kitchen, Carthines, I don't know how they say it. Yeah, and then Wild Brine is a company, and they've got the kimchi, and they've got a bunch of different flavors of sauerkrauts, and it's a new, exciting, like people are really getting back to kind of grassroots. I don't have time to ferment my own stuff. I live in a small place, it's smelly, so I get to outsource and buy it elsewhere. But I know some people who like to ferment at home, and it's wonderful. That revival.
Is it a particular brand, like is there a way to tell?
It'll say on, if it says pasteurized, no. You can also just get, like if your sauerkraut is coming from the middle of an aisle, then it's gonna have to be pasteurized to be shelf stable. If it's from a refrigerator section, if it goes moldy, if you forget about it back of your fridge, right, you know that these things are live and still evolving. But yeah, if it's unpasteurized, enter result. So yeah, the wild brine is a good one to check out. Buddy's, Carthines. There's a bunch. Hi.
Raw milk.
Okay. Not acid, not bitter. Illegal, but if you can get it, then charge you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
To go on the FODMAP diet.
If you have SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, then FODMAPs is useful. FODMAPs is a diet where you're cutting out fermentable items. So fructans, oligosaccharides, disaccharides, and whatnot. It's really restrictive. If you need it, great. Then it's wonderful. If you don't need it, it's a pain in the butt to follow, and why bother? Right? You can't have garlic, you can't have onions. Yeah, you can't have a lot of avocados.
You have apples, so
Yeah. But if you need it, so with treating SIBO, we do the treatment, eliminate the bacterial overgrowth, then you're on a FODMAPs diet for about 3 months at least.
Okay, so do it for like an intensive of 3 months, and then you should be able to clear that.
Do you know if you have SIBO, or are you just?
I don't know for sure.
Okay. There's breath tests you can do. So I work at Sage Clinic Vancouver. There's Sage Clinic Victoria, and we bought the machine. We have it at Sage Clinic Vancouver, because with the dollar, like it was creeping up to $350 to do the test. So we're like, let's just spend thousands, buy the machine, and then we can now offer it in Canada. So it's $210. It's a breath test, and it assesses whether you have bacterial overgrowth in your small intestine. But that would be a good way to start, because then you've got someone guiding you along the way and knowing if you need to go on that diet. Have you tried